Okay, now we're getting to the other kinds of punctuation. The period, it's usually fairly obvious, but sometimes people will use a comma instead of a period because when a statement ends, you need to use a period. Therefore, the period ends a statement. Period. Although sometimes it is used in other ways to indicate a short form, such as Mr. or Mrs., PRES period, which stands for president, B period, A period, which stands for Bachelor of Arts, and then we use them in any short form for provinces and states. So N period, Y period stands for New York, and etc. And there are many other places where the period actually indicates a short form. The next one is the exclamation mark. We noticed an exclamation mark in an earlier slide. An exclamation mark shows strong feeling, such as in this sentence. Wow, I am so excited. This is so great. I get to learn about punctuation. You'll notice on media especially, and Facebook in particular, that the exclamation mark is used a great deal and people will pile them up. If they're excited about someone's announcement, then they will add several exclamation marks in a row to show how excited they are. That's what exclamations are for. The next is the question mark. The question mark is fairly obvious. Just notice when you were writing a question to use a question mark. A question mark is used, obviously, to indicate that a question has been asked. For example, is that clear enough? Or, are we done yet? Okay, now we're getting to some related punctuation. Okay, there are 3 punctuation marks that people often do not know how to use well. They know that they're there, but they don't know how to use them well. And that's what you're going to learn. The first one is the colon. The colon introduces things that follow it. And so you've got 2 periods, one stacked upon the other one, and it introduces what's coming next. The next one is called a semicolon because it doesn't have 2 periods, it has a period and a comma. And remember, a comma is only a pause, whereas a period is a stop. And so it's called a semicolon, semi meaning half. Okay, so the semicolon likes to stop, pause, and go again. Okay, now the apostrophe, probably the most abused piece of punctuation in all of the English language. The apostrophe hovers up above rather than down below like all the rest of the punctuation, and it hovers up there to tell you that there is a letter missing and that the apostrophe is taking the place of the missing letter or letters, or that something belongs to someone. It indicates ownership for a noun. We'll start with the semicolon. The semicolons can be used to join 2 sentences, especially when the ideas that it separates are related. For example, Maria wanted to go to the movie. The star was her favorite actor. So instead of using a period and starting the whole new sentence, we can separate those 2 independent thoughts by using a semicolon because we're stopping and starting again. The semicolon can replace a comma and an and, or a comma and a because the ideas are related. So we could have said Maria wanted to go to the movie and the star was her favorite actor. Or we could have said Maria wanted to go to the movie because the star was her favorite actor. In the next examples, Susie needed to go downtown for groceries and her husband also wanted some razors. If we replace the comma and the and with a semicolon, we have Susie needed to go downtown for groceries. Her husband also wanted some razors. Notice that these ideas are related, and that's why we can use the semicolon. Semicolons are also used before adverbial conjunctions. And you're saying, what on earth is an adverbial conjunction? Well, you'll see in a minute. Semicolons are used before adverbial conjunctions that begin a dependent clause after an independent clause. Again, if you're not sure what a clause is, go back to the lesson on the kinds of sentences. So there are adverbial conjunctions that show certain ideas. To show addition, we use words like in addition, also, besides, furthermore, likewise, and moreover. And here is a couple of examples. Susan was always busy with her studies. Furthermore, she was an author and an actor. Next one, the election divided the country. In addition, it polarized the Liberal Party. So we're actually dividing sentences using these words to actually add information. We can show a contrast using however, nevertheless, or nonetheless. Mary liked Bob. Nevertheless, she would not go out with him. The car was running well. However, it was getting old. Notice that we pause and then start again, and that's what a semicolon is for. To show a result, we use words like accordingly, consequently, hence, therefore, and thus. Example, her name was Mary. Consequently, she got a lot of Christmas mail. The boss was fired. Accordingly, a notice of the position was posted. Now, to show alternatives, we use instead or otherwise. For example, he had to take the deal. Otherwise, he would lose his car. To show emphasis, we use words like indeed or in fact. For example, he did not like swimming or boats. In fact, he was really afraid of water. And to show time, we often use meanwhile. For example, we were watching a nature program. Meanwhile, we were recording the movie. Next, we have the colon. A colon introduces a list of items or ideas. For example, they only needed to remember these things: a pair of boots, a raincoat, binoculars, a notepad, and a pen. And notice that the items in the list are separated by commas, but the whole list is introduced with a colon. A colon can also be used after the greeting in a business letter. For example, Dear Sir, or Dear Mrs. Peters. These are formal ways of introducing a letter, and the colon tends to be a formal piece of punctuation. A colon is also used between numbers to show time. For example, it is 4:15 p.m. and the colon separates the minutes from the seconds. And next we have a very useful little mark called the apostrophe. The apostrophe is used to show ownership. To make a noun possessive, that's what showing ownership means, possessive, write the word first, then just add an apostrophe or add an apostrophe and an S. So, for example, this is Mary's car. Notice we wrote Mary and then added an apostrophe and S to show that she owns the car. Therefore, Mary has a car. These are the kids' boots. It's the kids who have boots, and therefore we write kids and add an apostrophe. We don't add an apostrophe and S because we're not saying kids's. We just say the kids' boots. Notice this though, the women's boots are on sale. The boots for women are on sale. We write women, then we add apostrophe S because we need the sound of the S to make it sound possessive when we say it. And we show it when we write it by using the apostrophe. Women's, without the apostrophe, is not even a word. Next, apostrophes can show where letters are missing in a contraction. And there are many kinds of contractions, which we will talk about in another lesson. But here are some examples. You're saying you can't, but maybe you won't, or don't want to. The contractions are putting two words together, and where the two words are put together, some letters are missing. And for example, your means you are, and the A is missing, so we put the apostrophe to indicate where the A is missing. In can't, we're saying can not. We put that together and we indicate the not is shortened to n't by using the apostrophe. And that's what apostrophes are for. As I noted before, the contractions join two words together, and the apostrophe shows where the letters have been left out in our pronunciation. Notice that the verbs are often contracted, such as I am, we join it to I'm, we are, we're all used to saying these things, and these are what the apostrophe is used for. Often the word not is reduced to nt after verbs. And then there are some problems. For example, the verb have after could, should, and would, and must gets reduced by two letters to just v. Now, this is where people get confused, and they often think they're hearing could of or would of instead of would have and could have. And so you will see that a lot of times incorrectly used, and it becomes a troublesome spelling only because people think they're hearing the word of instead of the end of the word have. The contractions also create some homonym problems, and you will hear people having problems with there, and there, or your, and your, because they're not sure which spelling to use when they're talking about they are, or there, or over there, etc. When we're talking about apostrophes and making possessive nouns, sometimes the apostrophe is used in a hyphenated word, and you're not sure just which word to make possessive. Some words joined by hyphens can be possessive. Hyphenated words are two or more words put together with hyphens to create one word. So for example, we have the hyphenated word mother-in-law, or brother-in-law, or father-in-law. We have lots of in-laws, and we use them as one word by joining three words together to create the one word. So we would say, my mother-in-law's car broke down on the highway. Note that mothers-in-law is the plural of mother-in-law. This applies to any in-laws you may have. For example, her brothers-in-law took her mother-in-law's car to the repair shop. So again, when there is no apostrophe, it's because it is a plural word. And we're going to pluralize brothers or mothers or fathers instead of the whole word brother-in-laws or mother-in-laws. So if you hear mother-in-laws or brother-in-laws, you know it's a possessive noun with an apostrophe in it. In addition, you will see some numbers and letters with apostrophes to distinguish the plural form. Consider the A's in his writing are similar to his 5's. He must have learned this in the 1990s. This convention, however, is controversial And there are ways to avoid using the apostrophe with single letters and numbers, such as he makes the letter A look like the number 5 in his writing. And in fact, with dates, British usage does not use the apostrophe. We just put an S. I noted earlier that the apostrophe is probably the most misused piece of punctuation. And two common misuses of the apostrophe are, first of all, using apostrophes in plurals. You never use an apostrophe in a plural form. Plural meaning more than one. So if you use an apostrophe, it indicates ownership. It indicates the possessive form of the plural words, men, women, boys, and girls. So in this sentence, women's, men's, boys, and girls' haircuts and manicures and pedicures are done here. In that example, every word with an apostrophe is possessive, and every word without an apostrophe is plural. We do not use the apostrophe in the plural words. Another one that gets confused is its and its. The possessive pronoun its does not have an apostrophe. However, the contraction for it is, it does have the apostrophe, and we pronounce it the same, its. In the example, this street is old, but it's not long before its name will be changed. Notice that when we say its name, we're saying that it owns the name, and that's the possessive form. Pronouns do not take apostrophes to become possessive. Now, we just talked about hyphens, and I'm putting hyphens and dashes together because they look very similar. However, a hyphen is shorter than a dash. Hyphens are used to join words together to make another word. We saw them in the previous slide with mother-in-law and brother-in-law, etc. Here you can take any 2 or 3 words and join them together, and we like to make adjectives doing this. For example, she is a well-loved singer. Well-loved, we put those 2 words together, join them with a hyphen, and we have one idea. He took a little-known path. Or his sister-in-law came to visit. Notice we're taking 2 or 3 words, sometimes 4, and stringing them together, and we use the hyphens to join them. However, dashes are there to separate ideas for emphasis in certain sentences. Notice the following. She is the friend, the only friend, who understood. Notice that the only friend is unnecessary, except that it adds emphasis to what has already been said. And so we separate that idea with dashes. The next one. He is middle class. He is from Vancouver, and he pays a lot of taxes. And notice that the extra information is just that. It's extra information. We're inserting it in the middle of our sentence, and therefore we put dashes. We can put this extra information at the beginning or at the end, but in any case, you need to separate that extra information from the rest of the sentence with the dash. So again, hyphens are used to join, dashes are used to separate. Even though they look similar, they are different. I hope you enjoyed your tour of punctuation, and don't forget to go to the lessons and to practice the use of punctuation, and go back through the presentation as often as you need to get better at punctuation. It really is there to help you make your writing understood to the reader. See you soon. Thank you.